How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Staying Focused for Jesus. I found this clip a while back, and I'm just getting around to sharing it. Now, there are a lot of people out there who respect Billy Graham, and you can make the argument about Billy Graham being legit or not legit. I'm not really finna go there right now because that's really hindsight in regard to the topic at hand. What I do want to discuss is this. No matter what you believe about Billy Graham was definitely a very, very popular pastor who many people have listened to in their lives, whether they are so-called white or so-called black. Billy Graham was also not an ignorant man. He was well studied. He was well learned. He's probably had more people listen to him than any other pastor, preacher, prophet, next to probably Jesus himself. And that's not something I really have to go into details about, but I know there are people who may not be too familiar with Billy Graham and Billy Graham's ministries. So what you're going to hear from Billy Graham's own mouth, this shows you that these people, they already know this information. The world knows this information. But it's interesting when the likes of people like me, who are of the darker persuasion, professing to be the Hebrews of the Bible, when we bring this stuff up, they say, oh, it's not true. It's not true. It's impossible. Not realizing by saying that they are actually fulfilling Bible prophecy. And this information is old. This information is old. So the question you have to ask yourself is, if Billy Graham knew this information back in 1971, I think this when he was doing this crusade. 1971, Billy Graham knew this information. It's 2019. How much more information, how much more knowledge has been written on this topic? How much more truth has came out? And you have these 2019 so-called pastors who claim that they have been doing all this research and they can disprove it from history and from the Bible. But Billy Graham knew it way back then with the information that he had access to. So let's hear what Mr. Billy Graham has to say.
Son of God. Anyone that can see Jesus on that cross and not be touched has a heart of stone. They first took off his clothes. Then they took long leather thongs with steel pellets or lead pellets on the end and beat him across the back until he could hardly stand up. Then they put a crown of thorns on his brow and his face was bleeding. And they laughed at him and they spit on him and they mocked him. And with one snap of his finger, 72,000 angels had already drawn their swords ready to come to his rescue and wipe this planet out of existence in the universe. And Jesus said, no, to this end was I born. And he dragged and lifted and hauled that cross. And don't you black people ever forget one thing. The man that helped Jesus carry that cross was a black man.
All right, so Billy Graham is starting off and he's saying pretty much the gospel. And he clearly says that the man that helped Jesus carry his cross was what we call a so-called black man. Both sides agree to that. That's it. That is biblical fact, and that is historical fact. So let's continue forward.
And don't ever forget another thing. Jesus belongs to Africa as much as he does to Europe and Asia.
The reason that Billy Graham is saying this is because he knows what he's about to say is going to offend many people. What you're going to see is when he speaks about Jesus being a black man, there's only going to be a few people that are going to, I guess you say, clap or say amen in their own way. But when he talks about that Christianity is not a black man's religion or a white man's religion, it is a religion of the world, Jesus belongs to the world, then the whole crowd is going to go, as we say, crazy. Now, they can receive Jesus being for the people, all people, but they can't receive Jesus being a black man. That offends them. So he starts the conversation off by saying that Jesus doesn't only belong to Africa, but he belongs to Europe and Asia. Yes, we know that Jesus came from that area in regards to his physical birth, but Jesus, he don't belong to the world. The world belongs to him. And so the other reason that Billy Graham is saying it like that on top of what we just said is because Billy Graham was a ecumenical preacher.
He was born in that part of the world that touches Africa and Asia and Europe, and Jesus was not a white man like me, nor was he as black as some of you. We don't know what the color of his skin, but it must have been a dark color like the people of his day, because he was a man like them.
There you have it. He clearly said that Jesus was not a white man like me in regards to himself, Billy Graham. He did not look like Billy Graham. That's what Billy Graham clearly said. So where did Billy Graham get that information from? Look how many people he's preaching to. He's just not going to throw something out there like that unless he has done some type of research or somebody has fed it to him. And I guarantee you, Billy Graham was not an ignorant man for him to make a statement like that. Then he has to cover himself, and he says, he's slick with his words. They're so slick with the words because they don't think that the majority of the people will actually understand what they are saying. He says that Jesus was not a white man like me, nor was he as black as some of you that are in the audience. What he was saying was, hey, he wasn't as black as y'all, some of y'all. He wasn't a Hamite. That's pretty much what he's saying, because Ham's lineage was of the really darker persuasion. The Israelites, they were of a ruddy color, a red color, like red clay, like the red clay of certain areas of Africa and stuff. Then he talks about Jesus being dark, but not as dark as some of the people in the audience. Of course, he was looking at darker, very dark-skinned people for him to make that statement. Then he goes on and he says what? But he had to be of a darker color like the people of his day, of his time period. So therefore, based off of what Billy Graham is saying, all one has to simply do is go back in history and look at the people who were in that area during the time period of Jesus Christ. Just based off of that, and you will see that the people during that time period where Jesus was, they were of the darker persuasion. You had Israelites in that area, and you had Ham's lineage in that area, because the area was dominated by what we call black people. So therefore, the statement that Billy Graham made about Jesus being a what we call black man, that's a generic term, is true, and he knows it. And it's proven from the scriptures. It's proven through history. So a person that rejects that fact and say it doesn't matter, that means that they have a ulterior motive and they are lying against the very truth that they say they believe, because they don't want to deal with it. Now, you all hear me preach and say this all the time. The reason that it matters in regards to the skin color of Jesus is because you have a false image, of Christ being presented and portrayed. If the Christ that is being presented and portrayed is the true Christ, that means that he is from a different lineage, which would mean that he is not the true Christ. So it matters in regards to Bible prophecy. It matters in regards to Bible prophecy. And it shows that many people, they don't really understand Bible prophecy. And so why are they picking up the Bible, trying to speak prophetic things and causing confusion, which would make them what? False prophets, false teachers. Because many of your people out here who claim they have studied these things, they have done exactly that. They've studied it and they've rejected the scriptures. They've rejected all the facts to continue to push the doctrine that they want to push, yet claim that we are preaching black supremacy, when in fact they are the ones who are pushing and preaching white supremacy, white superiority, by lying against the very Bible that they claim. Salvation to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. Israel is the head. There's no way around that. That's what the scriptures teach. Israel was chosen to be a light unto the other nations. They fell from that. Now Christ has brought that back into place. So this is what you are seeing, and people don't want to deal with it. And that ties in with Psalms 83. All the nations are confederate against Israel, which means they are confederate against God. They hate Christ. The real issue about Jesus being a man of color, what we call a so-called black man, has to do with the commandments. Because the scriptures say to love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Majority of what we call white Christians, they don't truly love black people. They don't. I didn't say all. I said majority of professing white Christians do not love black people. So they have a hard time accepting and receiving Jesus as a black man, yet they can accept and receive him as the famous image of him having the blue eyes and the long black, not black hair, but blonde hair. Because they relate to that, because they see themselves in that image. It boils down to themselves. We as people of color, for the longest, especially us in America, we always thought that Jesus was white, and we had no problem with it. Even when we were in our negative, before we came to the truth, we accepted Jesus being a white man because of the message, which are the words that spoke to our spirit. So this is what this boils down to. And let me add this, majority of professing black Christians, they also hate themselves, and they hate the thought of a black Jesus, because they also hate their neighbors. So Christ is using this truth to expose the heart of the people. Regardless if he is white or black, he's using this truth to expose the hearts of the people, to show them that, hey, it doesn't matter if he was black or white, people still don't love Christ because they hate everything that he represents, yet they want to walk in his office of power and authority, which is why they hide this truth. And then, him being a man of color and so many people hating black people is just really the icing on the on the cake, the cherry on top. But the root of it is hatred in the heart, regardless. Because they hate themselves too, because majority of them are lying. If they're lying, they're first and foremost lying against themselves. And they are helping to destroy the world, which means that they themselves would be destroyed, their family and their children and everything. So this boils down to a ungodly, unrighteous hatred for God himself. Oh, Jesus is a Negro? Hell no. I'm not bowing down and worshiping to no Negro. Why? Because they don't love their neighbor as they love themselves. So if they don't even love their neighbor who is black, then why in the world would they bow down to a black Messiah? And on the flip side, if blacks don't even love their neighbor as they love themselves, meaning what we call white people, why in the world would they bow down to a white man, a white Messiah? And this is what you're seeing. They're not doing it because they don't love their neighbor as they love themselves. I'm not saying that we should bow down to a white man. I'm not saying that we should bow down to a black man. What I'm saying is, if Jesus is black, then guess what? You're going to bow. He just happens to be black. So you're going to bow to the black man, the black God, God manifest in the flesh, Jesus. Plain and simple. If he was white, just for argument's sake, if he was white, on Judgment Day, we will be bowing before a white Jesus, the white Messiah. Either way, we're going to bow to the true Messiah, Jesus Christ, no matter what color he would or would not have been. It just so happens that he in his flesh is a man of color, what we in this physical world in America call a black man. So we all, both black and white, will bow the knee to a black man, Jesus Christ, God manifested in the flesh. If you got a problem with that, then bring my enemies before me and slay them before me, because they didn't want me to rule over them. When God would have given you the blessings just the same way he gives the blessings to Israel. It just so happens that Israel is his inheritance. There's no reason to be jealous about that. If you give your inheritance to, if you're white and you give your inheritance to your children, let's say you adopted me into your family, and you decide to give your inheritance, a bigger inheritance, to your children first and foremost before you give it to me, I can't be mad about that. You adopted me into your family. Those are your children. That's your inheritance that came forth from your loins first and foremost. Now, if you just do me any type of way and you've been telling me you love me and everything, and then you just leave me out or whatnot, then yeah, I'm gonna be upset about that, because I'm like, you've been telling me you love me. You didn't leave me nothing, but you saying you love me? That's not love. So understand that. Understand that. God isn't, I'm not fooling with the Gentiles because Israel is his people. He got blessings for you too. But Israel is his inheritance, first and foremost.
Don't ever say it's a white man's religion or a black man's religion. It's a world religion. He belongs to the world.
When he spoke the truth about Jesus being a man of color, a black man who had most likely ruddy skin, red colored skin color, you didn't hear too many people applauding. But when he made the statement of, don't ever say that Christianity, that Jesus is a black man's religion or a white man's religion, it's a world religion, the crowd burst out into applause, which shows you the hypocrisy of the people. They can accept the message of Jesus Christ. They can accept the characteristics of Jesus Christ, but they can't accept the flesh of Jesus Christ. And herein lies the problem with that. They end up being condemned by the very word that they profess, because the scriptures say what? Jesus is God manifest in the flesh, of the seed of David. So if you can't accept that this lineage just so happens to be what we call black, then you're not really accepting the words of Jesus, because the words of Jesus prophesy about him coming in the flesh through a specific lineage. This is how deep this thing goes. People are condemning themselves so much they don't even realize how much condemnation they are bringing upon themselves. Also, when we are describing ruddy as red, we're talking about a rich brown type of color. And it has this red hue because it's high in iron. It is high in iron. If you go on Google right now, and I've covered this in some of my older sermons, and there are other people who have covered this, go on Google, type in ruddy animals. Go look up ruddy, and you will see it correlates to red/brown/high iron content in the skin pigment. Oh, that's interesting. Majority of African Americans, they are affected by anemia, lack of iron. Sickle cell deals with a lack of iron, and then the cell is deformed because of some other things. That's a curse that God put on his people specifically, because we know that sickle cell primarily affects black people. It's known as the black people disease. There's no way around that. It is what it is. The facts speak no matter how you look at it. So sometimes you just have to study stuff that you're not used to studying, or you may think it may be irrelevant to you understanding certain things. But you got to remember that everything that's in this world, there's some type of wisdom you can get from it. If you're studying the anatomy of trees, there are things that you can learn about the wisdom of God in regards to why he made that tree the way he made the tree. And you'll be able to correlate it with the scriptures. In the same way, when you start to study colors and everything, white, black, I'm talking about like literal colors, green, yellow, and everything, you will find out that all your colors are pretty much your primary and your secondary colors. They're pretty much rooted from one color, even white, what we call white. So it's the same way in regards to ruddy, red, rooted in regards to what we're talking about, skin color, brown. Nothing that I'm making up. It just takes simple research to go to understand it. Now, we're going to be looking at another clip, and this clip is from a few years later. If I'm not mistaken, it's from 1974, and he's actually in Africa. He's actually in Africa, pretty much preaching the same sermon. Now, he's going to say almost the same thing, but he's going to be, it seems to me he's going to be a little bit more careful with his words. And he's going to mention some Indians that are in the audience. But when you study it historically, you understand where the term Indian came from and what it actually means. Then you have a deeper understanding of what he's actually saying. Now, let me add this. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but a lot of what you call your so-called Indian people, like in India, they are brown, but they come, some of them are mixed with Ham and Japheth, but a lot of them, they come from Ham's lineage. They come from Ham's lineage. When you study it out historically, you find out that the original Buddhists, original Hindus, who they call Sambo, the black god, they migrated from what we call Africa over into that land. So today we may call them Indians, which is interesting because we call them Indians, but then we call the people over here in America Indians. But we say, hey, there's no correlation between the two of them. You will find out, you trace them back, that these people come from the lineage of Ham, most of them, not all of them, coming out of Africa, and then they went over there and established those kingdoms. And even the Chinese and stuff like that.
Now, Jesus was a man. He was human. He was not a white man. He was not a black man.
I had to add this because I hear so many so-called preachers today say the same thing, that Jesus was not a white man, nor was he a black man. More specifically, Brian Dillinger, he has a video out there that is stating that Jesus was not a black man. Then if you listen to the video, he also said that Jesus wasn't a white man either. And he goes off talking about some crazy stuff. If I remember correctly, he said something about that Jesus was Middle Eastern, or, the classic argument. I just found that funny and interesting because he speaks against Billy Graham, but in relation to this topic, they're saying the same thing. And Brian Dillinger, Husky 394 XP, he vehemently rejects the notion, the thought about the Jews being what we call black. I wonder if it has anything to do with him being German. And you can't say nothing against the Holocaust, even though the facts speak for themselves any way you look at it. But the Holocaust did not happen the way that people, or they, have said it has happened. And that was really the basis for the state of Israel being established. I wonder if him being German has anything to do with that. Yet he rejects all the facts that conclusively show that Jesus is in his fleshly form what we call a black person, a black man. Now, of course, the most important thing is his gospel, but you can't reject that. You can't sit here and support the people that are in the state of Israel and then say, oh, color doesn't matter, when it comes to somebody saying something against that you don't want to look into or accept any way, form, or fashion. What color shirt do you have on right now? Tell me, in your mind, in your spirit, what color shirt do you have on right now? You already answered it. So I thought color doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you have on a blue shirt or a white shirt. It doesn't matter. Even though you specifically chose that shirt to put on because you wanted to wear a blue shirt, a black shirt, a red shirt, a pink shirt, or whatever color it is. So if God chooses to come in a specific color through a specific lineage that happens to be a specific color, then who are you to tell God what he can or can't do, or what? It does matter. It only doesn't matter to those who wants to continue to believe a lie. All colors matter. And I mean, like red, green, blue, the colors that we see and everything, all those colors matter. When you go colorblind and you can't see nothing for real, all the beautiful colors, then come talk to me and say it doesn't matter. But other than that, stop with this foolishness. Also, next time you run that red light or that red stop sign and you get pulled over, make sure you tell the police, officer, that red stop sign, it doesn't matter that it's red. Color doesn't matter. When an officer asks you, why did you run that stop sign? You mean that stop sign that said stop? Yeah, the big old red one. Or why'd you run that red light? Why did you run that red light, sir or ma'am? What does it matter if the light is red? Because color doesn't matter. So I did what I wanted to do. Let me know how that works out for you, since color does not matter.
He came from that part of the world that touches Africa and Asia and Europe, and he probably had a brown skin, very much like some of the Indian people here today. Christianity is not a white man's religion, and don't let anybody ever tell you that it's white or black. Christ belongs to all people. He belongs to the whole world.
So when we look at the definition of ruddy from Webster's Dictionary 1828, ruddy, of a red color, of a lively flesh color, or the color of the human skin in high health. Thus we say ruddy cheeks, ruddy lips, or a ruddy face or skin, a ruddy youth, and in poetic language, ruddy fruit. But the word is chiefly applied to the human skin. So this ain't got nothing to do with Esau was ruddy. He was red because the blood showed through his skin when, just like the white man get mad. That is pseudo dummy doctrine, science. I don't know what it is. It's just pure foolishness. Then definition number 2 of a bright yellow color as ruddy gold, and they say this is unusually used, but it can be used to apply to that. But most commonly it applied to the skin, the flesh, the color of a person's flesh. It was of a red color. When we look up Indian, it says from India, and thus from Indus, the name of a river in Asia, pertaining to either of the Indies, east or west. A general name of any native of the Indies. As an East Indian or West Indian, it is particularly applied to any native of the American continent. Keep that in mind. People that came over here, they migrated over here. American, pertaining to America. American as a noun, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Now, am I saying that the people who were originally over here, they are Israelites? No, that's not what I'm saying. The point I'm making is they were of that brown color, copper colored skin. So what do we do with that? Well, in the scriptures, Israelites many times were mistaken for Egyptians. Many times they were mistaken for Ham's lineage. Why? Because Ham's lineage ended up mixing in with Israel's lineage. They were intermarrying. Copper, supposed to be so-called from Cyprus, an isle in the Mediterranean. This opinion is probable, as the Greeks called it Cyprian brass, brass of Cyprus. Doesn't the Bible say something about Jesus in regards to brass and stuff? You gotta dig deeper, and besides the surface stuff that people be given that don't make no sense. In this case, let me add this before I read on. What are we made up of? We come from the dust. We come from the dirt. What's in the dirt, in the dust? The minerals. What do we eat? We eat food that has the minerals that we need to survive. So certain groups, they had higher levels of minerals in them, and the Israelites, they had a higher concentration of iron and also copper, because copper plays into that. Because of the dirt that the original man, Adam, the clay that God molded, the dust that God used to make Adam, was from a specific region of the world that had a high iron content, which gave him his ruddy color. In this case, copper was originally an adjective, a metal of what? Of a pale red color tinged with yellow. So you go on Google and you type in copper colored, and some people have already put some stuff up, and it says, who is copper colored? You see on the left-hand side, you have what we call the $5 Indians, and this is historical fact, nothing that I'm making up. Go look it up. The $5 Indian, that was based off of the, I think it's pronounced Dowell's Roll or something like that. It's easy to find on YouTube or Google. And you have the famous Kobe Bryant, and they were asking this question, who is copper colored? Pennies are made from copper. We see that Kobe Bryant fits the copper color more than the $5 Indian. You see this image right here. It says a barbecue mat, barbecue gold, copper colored. Then you see Ice Cube, and then you see the other guy, I don't know him, on the other side, and they're pretty much making a comparison. Majority of your so-called Indians of today, they were put there by a specific group of people in America. America did it to cause confusion. Majority of these people, like Ice Cube, if he is of native descent, they traveled over here to America. They were not already over here like they were just born here. They traveled over here. If I understand correctly, and this is just speculation on my part because I haven't researched it enough to say this is conclusive, but I tend to believe it because how else would they have gotten over here? Back in the day, the way they got here was because there was a land path that they traveled to be able to get over here. Over time, through earthquakes or whatever it may be, ultimately God, that piece of land that connected the continents, it pretty much is sunk underwater. So they were no longer connected. And that's my understanding from what I have researched so far. Some of you know about this. And then next to that image of Ice Cube and the other guy, you see it says copper colored tube background. You see it's a brown color, deep brown color. Then there's another image that's on Pinterest. I'm not going to click it because it's going to bring it up and stuff like that. But you can go look this up for yourself. And even right here, it says copper colored fire glass. Right here we see a vintage copper colored Roman soldier on a coin. It's simple, nothing that we are making up. And the reason that this copper is this color, where it says copper color aluminum pendant, is because it's been machined. It's been machined. But this Roman coin would be more close to the original original color of copper, because it hasn't been machined and polished up and all that other stuff. Because when you start to polishing it, then it looks more like this, or it looks more like this this ring right here, or like this right here. When you don't polish it, where it says many spike beads, copper colored spike beads, and you have a copper colored heart shaped bird bath. So you definitely have different shades of it depending on how much it's polished up or whatever. But in its raw form, you see that it looks like this or this. And then when you type in raw copper on Google, you clearly see this is what it looks like in its raw form, to give you an even better idea. That is raw copper ore. It's what we call brown. And as I mentioned before, when you type in ruddy animals, you see that they are that same description we read. That lively, that deep, rich, it's a deep, rich brown. It's red because of the iron content. You can go look at these images. There's a ruddy horse. It's beautiful. The colors are a rich, just glowing type of color. Then you go look up iron ores, and it says iron ores are rocks and minerals from which metallic iron can be economically extracted. The ores are usually rich in iron oxides and vary in color from dark gray, bright yellow, or deep purple to what? Rusty red. So of course God took these elements and he formed man from it. Some of you know about the purple people because of their skin color and the dyes they were using. Then we go over here to iron oxides, as we saw. They are chemical compounds composed of iron and oxygen. There are 16 known iron oxides and oxyhydroxides, best known of which is what? Rust, a form of iron oxide. Well, what color is rust? Iron oxides and oxyhydroxides are widespread in nature and play an important role in many geological and biological processes. They are used as iron ores, pigments, catalysts, and in thermite, and occur in hemoglobin. Iron oxides are inexpensive and durable pigments in paints, coatings, and colored concretes. Colors commonly available are in the earthy end of the yellow, orange, red, brown, black range. So I know a lot of you know this, but maybe you didn't make this connection. And also I know there may be people that don't know this. So if you type in yellow bone in the Urban Dictionary, it says a yellow bone is the lightest type of light-skinned black female. It talks about they can often be very rare to see in comparison to other blacks because there are not as many of them. You can't see the rest, but you get the point. It says the term yellow bone refers to black people who are light-skinned, but it's commonly used to refer to light-skinned women. Due to the idealization of light-skinned women have been forced to go to great lengths to achieve this complexion in hopes of appearing more attractive to the opposite sex. And it has nothing to do with black skin or yellow bone or red bone, because a yellow bone is considered a black person amongst black people. What they have done is to cause division and confusion. They ended up taking the skin color and taking the yellow bone, the lighter black people, and lifting them up to say that their skin color was superior to their brothers and sisters that had darker skin. But it had nothing to do with uplifting the term the yellow bones or the light skinned dark black people. It had to do with them subconsciously planting seeds in the mind of their captives to perceive in their spirit and subconscious that white was better. Had nothing to do with the light-skinned black people, aka yellow bone or red bone. It had to do with Okay, we're going to use them to have them perceive that light is better. We're going to treat them better. But in actuality, it had to do with, okay, if light is better, then that means that I want to be like the white people. I want to be like the white man during that time period, during the slave days when, slavery was how it was back in the day. And so this has progressed to 2019, and we see that going on, where people are bleaching their skin, or when they wear makeup, they're making their skin of the lighter persuasion by using makeup that makes their skin lighter, making them look more yellow bone. But it has nothing to do with them seeing the yellow bone as not black. It just had to do with, okay, we're going to use this group of people to affect the other ones, so then they want to be more like us, meaning want to be white, in essence, white supremacy and stuff like that. So I want to make sure I address that, since they actually said it. And that's what happened, and that's what's happening today. That people are not comfortable in the skin that God has given them on both sides, both black and white. So then you go to red bone, which is pretty much the same thing. Red bone means light-skinned, colored person. So now you know red bone means light-skinned, colored person. Don't thank us. My wife would be considered a yellow bone or a red bone. She is a light-skinned black female. So just like my wife is what we consider a red bone or a yellow bone, which is a light-skinned black person, she is very light in comparison to me. I'm on the ruddy side. I have a higher iron content in my skin. And you look at me, it's easy to see that once you understand this knowledge that you are being given by the Spirit. My skin is more glowing. Her skin is more pale, more on the yellow, more on the lighter side. Mine is more ruddy. Now, if you take my son, you'll look at him and say, oh, little bruh, he light-skinned, which he is. But if you put him in the middle of myself and my wife, his mother, he's darker than my wife, who is yellow bone, red boned, but he is lighter than me. So he's in the middle between his mama and me, but he will still be considered by the world standards as light-skinned. But he's darker than his mom, and he's lighter than me, though. Now, as he grows up and he grows into his body and stuff, and different things, his DNA starts to bring forth the code that's written in it. He may very well be as dark as me, or he may stay at the complexion that he's already at. But you get the point. What we call black people, they're brown. What we call black people are brown. You got different shades of brown because the two colors mix. You got two different browns with two different levels of iron. Me obviously having way more iron in my DNA, my body, than my wife's. The two browns coming together to create a different shade of brown. He's still brown. He's still what we call a black man, a little black boy. Nobody sees my son and says, "Oh, that's a beautiful little white boy that you have." They said, "Oh, that's a beautiful little black boy. That's a beautiful son you have there." So this is just basic common sense, but I want to make sure that I break it down so that we can all understand it. And y'all know I try to keep things simple, because things are already complex in the world. If we make them more complex without first breaking down the complexity, then you're not going to understand things. Something is complex because it's based off of things that are simple that have come together to make up whatever it is that is complex. The World Wide Web is a complex web of information, knowledge, right? But it is based off of something simple that grew into something complex. So that's why I try to break things down as simple as possible so that you can understand the complexity of complexion. So the reason you got to let's go deeper with it in regards to red bone, yellow bone, right? Why do we use those terms on a deeper level? Not just dealing with skin color, but why do we use those terms? Because there's a reason for it, and it has to do with bone marrow. And if we read bone marrow, it says, let's go down right here. I want to read this part. Function. They also play an important role in blood cell production and fat storage. Red bone marrow helps produce blood cells. So there you go. It's deeper than yellow bone or red bone. That's why we say that, because of the red, the iron. This is why God took Adam's rib. That's why God took Adam's rib. Maybe one day I'll do a sermon on that. So your blood production is actually produced in your bones. So if you have weak blood, then most likely your bones are brittle. Your bones are not producing the red blood cells that you need to carry the oxygen to your body. Most likely calcium deficiency and stuff like that. So, this is a pretty interesting story and study in regards to bone marrow and how your blood is produced in your actual bones. You're not going to hear a lot of people teach about that and stuff like that. Just on both aspects. We hear about blood, but we don't actually hear about the production of it, and especially in regards to the scriptures and the importance of it. So we look at hemoglobin, and it says it is the iron containing oxygen transport metalloprotein in the red blood cells of almost all vertebrates, as well as the tissues of some invertebrates. Hemoglobin in blood carries oxygen, you see the correlation, from the lungs or gills to the rest of the body, i.e. the tissues. There it releases the oxygen to permit aerobic respiration, still probably said it wrong, to provide energy to provide energy to power the functions of the organism in the process called metabolism. A healthy individual has 12 to 20 grams of hemoglobin in every 100 milliliters of blood. So I remember reading this article a while back in one of my videos, and it says, what does anemia, and that's what we call iron deficiency, for those who don't know. Who does anemia affect? Not what, but who. Women of color are more likely to have iron deficiency, and scientists are stumped as to why. Their scientists are stumped as to why. It's not hard to figure out. But you can just go on Google and find all this stuff. There are so many articles they have done, and majority of us already know this stuff, but maybe you were not making the connections. Maybe you were not making the connections. And for those who don't know, the simple definition of anemia is a condition marked by a deficiency of red blood cells or of hemoglobin in the blood. Didn't we just discuss that? Yes. So it says, how does someone get sickle cell disease? Sickle cell disease is more common in certain ethnic groups. sickle cell disease is more common in certain ethnic groups, including people of African descent, including African Americans who primarily get it, because there's a reason for that. It's one of the curses. Say it is a identifying marker among whom 1 in 12 carries a sickle cell gene. Hispanic Americans from Central and South America, people of Middle Eastern, which is Africa, Asia, India, and Mediterranean descent, who descend from the cradle of civilization in that area, Africa. And some of them end up picking it up because they were intermarrying and mingling with other tribes and people who the curses were upon. And some of these people, they attach themselves to Israel, so the curse is passed down to their children because of disobedience. So you will have some white people, so-called white people, who are affected by the sickle cell disease, but there are many factors that apply to that, to why they have it, and it could be because of who their mother married, a certain lineage in there somewhere where God made sure that that gene was brought up and was prominent in a said generation. Or the best answer from a biblical perspective is because you probably had that lineage, their family, their ancestors back in the day, they attached themselves to Israel. This is what we call the strangers attaching themselves to Israel. So because they attached themselves to Israel, they were also bound by the laws of Israel, which mean they were bound more so by the blessings and cursings that came with either obedience or disobedience. So God brought that curse back up to identify them also. Now, I guarantee if you trace out these people who we call white and they are having sickle cell disease back to back, and you know what I'm saying, generation after generation after generation after generation, and they can't figure out why, I guarantee either there's some biracial mixing in there with Hebrews, or if you trace them all the way back or as far as you can go, you will find out that they attached themselves to Israel and they were in areas where Israelites were, meaning their ancestors were. So it says SCD affects approximately 100,000 Americans, and these numbers, give or take, are correct or not correct, but you get the point. I believe that the numbers they put out, they are either, majority of the time, depending on what it is, I believe is higher than what they say. SCD occurs among about 1 out of every 365 Black or African American births. Think about that. Then it says SCD occurs among about 1 out of every 16,300 Hispanic American births. Look at those numbers. About 1 in 13 Black or African American babies is born with sickle cell trait. That is astounding. That's why they call it the Black people disease. And then it says, can a white person have sickle cell anemia? Answer, yes, they can. Sickle cell disease is an inherited blood disorder of the red blood cells, and it can affect people of any race or ethnicity. That's true. But we're dealing with a blood disorder, a blood disease. Jesus said, the Old Testament says what? Life is in the blood. So God sends and puts specific curses in the blood as identifying markers to get our attention. So when we got in 2019 and all the rest of the years, when we started studying these things in relation to the scriptures, we would see what he wanted us to see. Then it says, why sickle cell anemia is common in Africa. The sickle cell gene has become common in Africa because the sickle cell trait confers some resistance to y'all see it, malaria during a critical period of early childhood, favoring survival of the host and subsequent transmission of the abnormal hemoglobin gene. They just talking a whole bunch of nonsense. They don't know what they're talking about. They're trying to sound scientific and smart. You want to know why? Go read your Bible. And this is what we are doing, breaking this down. So here's another article you can go look up. Why across Africa from Kenya to South Africa is the soil red? The ground is called laterite and is a clay which has been enriched with iron and aluminum that has developed over long periods of time by the heavy rainfalls and the intense heat. Sometimes the material is rock hard, but when scuffed by vehicle wheels, it becomes a choking red dust. The iron is the origin of the redness. The iron is the origin of the redness, i.e. a rusty color. And did you know that the weather patterns in Africa, they affect the weather patterns everywhere, especially here in America. This is stuff they don't want y'all to understand. There's no reason to make it up. And this is yet another article piggybacking off what we've been talking about. The Native Americans, they were what? Copper colored. We see what color that is. It's a red color. And we know about the red dirt of Georgia and many other places. This article says legendary American soil, red dirt. And so it talks about how the dirt and how important it is. The red soil, the red dirt is important in agriculture. Talks about clay soil for peaches and stuff like that. And it's primarily in the South and also in Oklahoma. Well, when the conquistadors and Christopher Columbus, when all of them came over here, where did they land at? In the South regions of America. Because back then, there was no South and North America how we see it today. It was they saw it as one piece of land. And these people were all the way up there in what we call Canada, in the cold and stuff like that. So it just makes sense that this soil would be red and the people would be copper colored. Because you can connect America back with Africa, whose soil and dirt is also red. Like this rich red. Then we go to the scriptures and we see in the book of Genesis chapter 2 verse number 7, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. That dust came directly from what we call Africa, in that area. Mostly we can conclusively say Israel, that God took the dust from Israel being a part of Africa. There's no such thing as the Middle East. No such thing as the Middle East. Israel is a part of Africa. He took the dust of the ground from Africa and formed man. He formed him with himself, his own spit, his own sweat, to form him into what we have today, clay. Once he did that, then he breathed into his nostrils, in essence breathed also into our nostrils, the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So if you go on Google and you type in what color makes red, it tells you something very interesting. You won't be able to make red from other colors because it's a primary color that can't be produced by mixing shades. If you want a cooler red, you can do that by mixing different colors, but red is a primary color that can't be produced by mixing shades. Are we understanding that? They are trying to produce Israel by mixing other religions, other beliefs, other colors of people to bring them together to create what they see as Israel. But Israel is a primary color. Israel is primary from who? From God. You can't make what they can't recreate what God created to be primary, meaning Israel was supposed to be the head. Just like you had the iron and stuff like that. And then the rest of the nations, they have iron and everything, but that's rooted from what? From Israel. We know we can trace Israel all the way back to Noah. Noah was what we would consider an Israelite or a Hebrew, a Jew of the flesh. Blessed be the God of Shem. That's what Noah said. The same God of Shem is the same God of Noah. Then you look up brown, it says to mix a brown, you mix a primary with its complementary color. So purple and yellow, blue and orange, or red and green. There is a diverse amount of brown in nature. This color can be mixed with any other color. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If it was edifying to you, be sure to do your part and share it on all your social media outlets, websites, and forums. Your help is greatly appreciated to help fight this war and reach lost souls. Don't forget to like, dislike, and/or subscribe. Be sure to also check out our website, stayingfocusedforjesus.life. And make sure you check out that resource section, which has a lot of videos that I share and some other stuff, books, documents, PDF, websites, many things, and it's growing daily as I add to it. Also follow us on Facebook for even more content. Staying Focused for Jesus on Facebook.
Squeeze it so tight, get the last drop, till there's nothing left, until we pass out. Keeping us around to clean up the mess and take the garbage out, but we'll be trash next. Create catastrophes to speed up the process. Depopulation, agenda, progress. News tell half-truths, hidden in plain sight. They know with it Kool-Aid, but gave us cyanide. They know we don't see it. They know you can't see it. What they've done to us. Open your eyes. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It ain't safe for us. They made it so sweetly, so it will be easy to carry their plans out to lemonade. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It ain't safe for us. Made it too easy while we're busy sleeping. They carry their fabricated knowledge, false education, standing ovation for my degree in indoctrination. Georgia Guidestones plainly tell us that they plan to eliminate us. Conspiracy theory, we see no dilemma as they quietly wipe out billions. They know we don't see it. They know you can't see it. They know what they done to us, taking us down. Lemonade, don't drink the Kool-Aid, it ain't safe for us. They made it so sweetly, so it will be easy to carry their plans out to eliminate us. Lemonade, don't drink the Kool-Aid, it ain't safe for us. Made it too easy while we're busy sleeping. They carry their plans out to eliminate us. Invisible ones behind the scenes, like Geppetto, pulling the strings. Master plan, dumb us all down. Eat what they feed us, try not to think. Carry on, nothing to see as they continue with their killing spree. We wasting time on trivial things and buy what they sell.